Let's do a check-in on Michigan basketball's coaching search. We are nearly a week into it as we sit here on Thursday afternoon. But to me, at least, as we go along here, I think it's pretty clear that a couple things, and we talked about this on Monday. High major guys right now are not leaving high majors that they have NIL support at and that are pretty well established to go build somewhere else that may not have as good of NIL support. And I think this is a perfect example. Chris Collins at Northwestern. Is Northwestern a better job than Michigan if both were 8-24? No, but he's got them in the tournament for the first time ever in back-to-back years. He has some NIL support there. They were able to hang on to Boo Buie last year, despite other teams making a run at them. And guys don't want to build their entire career and then leave for someplace else where there's a risk there, given the landscape of college basketball. It's not what it would have been 5 years ago. It's not what it was like when John Beilein left West Virginia for Michigan. But that's one thing that I've taken away, and I know we talked about that during Monday's show. But the second thing feels like to me is we're in the phase of dominoes falling. They haven't fallen yet, but they're going to. And everybody's kind of waiting on Louisville and Michigan, and everybody's kind of waiting on Dusty May from Florida Atlantic. They play tomorrow, by the way, Friday at 12:15 Eastern time against Northwestern. But you're looking at him seeming to have the pick between, this is just my opinion, but the pick between the Michigan job and the Louisville job. Then there's kind of that tier two behind them with the guys like Darian DeVries from Drake, Nico Medved from Colorado State, and others. And then you look at it as well. West Virginia seems to be waiting on Darian DeVries is their top target, but he's not going to give them an answer until the dominoes fall on Dusty May, which job opens between Michigan and Louisville, if he's the next candidate up for either of those schools. So we're just sitting here waiting right now. It's kind of a waiting game at this point, and I think things will start to move once some of these teams get eliminated from the tournament or they get into the next round and there's a little bit more time.
It's going to be interesting for sure. I feel like, for Dusty May, you have a scenario where, and I think even some people think West Virginia might still kind of be lingering there for him as well. But it does feel like it's between Michigan and Louisville. And for him, the decision comes between, are you going to go to a school that is more or less basketball first? It's in the state of Kentucky, obviously, a lot of pride with their rivalry with Kentucky over there in Lexington. So you're really choosing between a school that's basketball first, that claims they have the war chest to kind of keep you, to give you what you need to attack the portal, attack NIL and those types of things. Or, for as much has been made about maybe some of Michigan's struggles or what, the downsides of bringing Michigan into the fold here is it's still a Big Ten job. It's still, again, the TV. I think Michigan can I really do think Michigan can probably pay a little bit more than Louisville does, given the fact that, you're not spending a whole lot on the buyout with Juwan Howard. You do have that new TV contract. And even with, despite what we just talked about with football and all those assistants being as compensated as well as they are, still did kind of save a decent amount with not having Jim Harbaugh there, which is obviously they're not better off by that by any means. I'm not saying that, but to me, he's 47 years old. He's got the rising profile and he's got those Big Ten ties through Indiana. And it would make a lot of sense, but you're right. Like Michigan's going to have to sell a vision of NIL and how to get all that sorted out. And admissions is a huge thing as well. So, to me, I don't, there is no home run hire here because I don't know that anyone will be satisfied, because a lot of the people that are commenting on who they want are people that are maybe football fans first and, at least maybe casual Michigan basketball fans, but even the diehard fans kind of seem to realize the thing that you said about, no, John Calipari is not coming here. TJ Otzelberger, Shaka Smart, given those buyouts, are not coming to Michigan, because I don't see Michigan being a school that pays $18 million just to hire someone. Like, it's not going to happen. So, I like DeVries a lot. I put out something on Wednesday night of maybe my 5 favorite guys. May was at the top of that list. Darian DeVries was in that mix. I'm a big Pat Kelsey guy for what he's done at Charleston. Amir Abdur-Rahim also in the mix. And then I think that Nico Medved, I know his name has come up. I think that would maybe be the highest quote unquote floor hire they could make. I don't know how high the ceiling is. It seems like it goes back to something you and I talked about the other day. If you're trying to hire someone who is like Beeline-esque, you should maybe just hire John Beeline. But that's maybe a totally separate conversation. But in terms of the names that were out there, yeah, I mean, I don't get too bogged down in it being potentially a mid-major guy. Those schools have far less resources. Division I basketball has almost 200 more schools than Division I football does. So that candidate pool is a lot wider, and there's, a lot maybe less things to look at when it comes to hiring a good basketball coach against, hiring a high major football coach. So that's my long-winded way of saying that I think that the options we've heard, I think, are pretty strong, but none of them come without risk. And I don't know if there's any hire that you could make that comes without risk. So we'll see what happens.
Right. No, it's true, especially with the candidate pool. And the interesting thing is like everyone seems to have the same candidate pool. It's just like, yeah, we'd love Dusty May if we're West Virginia, and maybe he is somehow in the mix there. That would really surprise me if he chose there over a Michigan or Louisville. But it's like everyone kind of has the same list in maybe different orders a little bit. Would you say, based on kind of, things that are out there, that it seems like out of the non-Dusty May candidates, maybe Michigan's next choice would be Darian DeVries, and then after that, Abdur Rahim? Not exactly sure on that order, but it feels like those are kind of the next two when it comes to, what Michigan's looking at.
I like Darian DeVries a lot. I think that if it's not Dusty May, I mean, he is number 2 on my list right now, especially if you're going that mid-major route. This is going to be pretty close to a total rebuild, depending on who comes back. That still can. Obviously Terrence Williams has eligibility. Namari Burnett has eligibility.
Those guys aren't good enough for it to not be a rebuild, even if they come back. Right.
But just to have some sort of piece there. We're just trying to fill out a starting lineup, right? A lot of the questions that should be levied towards these candidates is who you're bringing with you. And, Darian DeVries, his son, Tucker DeVries is one of the best mid-major guards in the country. Averaged almost 22 points per game this year. I think he's the 2-time conference player of the year, or defending 2-time conference player of the year. So you would think that he would come as well. DeVries, to me, I like that. Yeah, can he get in? Admissions,
that would be the other thing. He's a junior, and that's been tough for Michigan to get. Now, could he graduate and then come over?
That's what I'm wondering.
Could he go to the NBA? Because that's a possibility for him too. He's an NBA. Sure. He's a legit NBA draft prospect.
Yeah, and I think when you look at DeVries as a candidate too, something I like is that he was a longtime assistant under Dana Altman and Greg McDermott at Creighton. He has Drake of all places in the NCAA tournament for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. And in all 6 seasons that he's been there, they've won at least 20 games and 24 plus games in 5 of those 6 years. So, he's a tactician. I think he's a really good game planner. You look at like maybe the Ken Pom profile of his teams, they've had to do it in a variety of different ways. I just like what he brings to the table. And I think that, he'd be a quality hire. The one thing I would say is, like, for any of these guys, just because you haven't heard of someone or you're not familiar with what's happened at Drake or at a Charleston or at a South Florida, like I wouldn't freak out. Like, there are a lot of good basketball coaches out there. And when you're coming off a year where you went 8-24, I don't know that you can be you can be picky. Michigan should shoot for as high as it possibly can, but I don't know. I think that DeVries would be a pretty good number 2 to Dusty May if it breaks out that way.